After all this, you still...
I still want that gas, yes. And you had better deliver.
This is Greenhouse Gaslighting, a free and independent podcast discussing society and culture with a left-wing, down-to-earth perspective. If you've ever wanted a deep dive on the issues, but felt like the bar for entry was too high, then you're in the right place. All right, folks, welcome back to the Greenhouse. Has it been, 4 months since our last episode? It has.
Wow. Yeah, I guess it has.
Time flies when you're living under the stupidest administration. I mean, I'm trying to think like what historically takes the cake for the environment we're in right now. And this is the cool zone, right? This is the unique part of history. Every time I think I have this administration figured out, every time I think I have a novel angle, every time I'm like, oh, they're doing the Bush years but stupider, which is kind of still like the most cogent thing you can use to describe the moment we're in. It just ends up devolving into some new like desperate shit. And that the unique Trump flavor, like the ballroom, the weaponization fund, I don't even know where to begin with some of it, which is why if Greenhouse Gaslighting is about anything, it's about Gundam.
Yeah.
A series with political satire, bizarrely, also cogent for the present moment.
I was gonna say, this does connect. The particular series that we're talking about today, I think, does have a few parallels with the present.
Oh my
None of the
gosh.
things that you just described. I mean, there was, I mean, the interior design porn. Maybe that kind of relates to the ballroom a little bit.
I think it does. I think it does because it's like if you try to like flag where we were January of last year to today, just seeing again the rampant usage of AI, the rampant violation of civil rights. We have our own manhunter agency on the loose, so to speak.
Well,
Uh,
and the Manhunter Agency, Maha,
oh
is
Lord,
also
oh
a
my
separate
God.
agency in the administration.
So again, uh, and to top it off, like earlier in the year, and this is I feel like we've talked about this probably in our Discord server, maybe in a couple episodes where like Bandai and Sunrise as a company just don't know how to communicate about their product. So all the rumors about the Sydney Sweeney live action movie were like coming out even before they had an announcement date for the US Hathaway release. If the
Yeah.
timeline adds up. And like the whole thing was just like it was reeking of like, we talk about the ascendancy of the right. They're definitely politically ascendant. I don't know if they're going to be culturally ascendant, but they are
Well, it's
making the farce
interesting.
that they are.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that because I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but I did see this article this morning about how that 2024 was treated as this vibe shift, and now like especially they were citing like I didn't get a chance to read the article yet, but just in kind of like the quick summary of it,
Yeah.
they were citing stuff like the fact that the America 250, which is feels so I mean, like, it's not just that, like, like, oh, like, what is there to celebrate? Like that kind of general tone, but like, it just feels so abstract as a concept, like for this moment, because it just feels so divorced from what we're talking about regularly. Um, but they were talking about like how they can't get any of the artists doing this. All of these like right wing things are like failing and stuff on the cultural sense.
Right.
The fact that no one's willing to like come up and like do these things is all kind of indicative that like maybe that was a premature assumption.
No, it definitely speaks to where we're at societally. Like, I think the biggest thing in this vibe shift you've mentioned, right? And maybe we can tie this to maybe 2016 more specifically. Maybe we can tie this to the pandemic. but there has been an articulation, right, of dissatisfaction with the thing we call America, um, voiced in a variety of methods, some cogent, most not. Um, it's kind of played into our politics with what they call right wing populism now, um, to some extent. And there's this articulation, right, of whatever this thing is, it needs to either be destroyed or dramatically changed, intersecting at the eve of like the 250th anniversary, right? And if you
Yeah.
think about like just 50 years prior, the bicentennial being a huge deal, you would think that the 250th would be equally, present in the public consciousness, and it's not. It's like that wave of exhaustion that's just washed over everybody, and like only the most like in a way, right? Like the Trump era has kind of changed what it means to be American in the sense of any jingoism, any patriotism is fully performed through showing allegiance to MAGA and whatnot,
Well,
and then
and that's
everything else is yeah. Go ahead.
well, I was gonna say that's like the thing that I was thinking of too with respect to um the 250 stuff is like it's all couched in like, oh, this is the excuse to do the ballroom for Trump. And which I mean, that is like almost worthy of an episode in of itself. That like
Oh
the
yeah,
lengths that they are willing to go to justify this to like the fact that it's like this is like a signature accomplishment more than anything else is really insane.
indeed, indeed. And I think like again, like in this environment of like absolute naked display of power at its worst, wealth disparity at an all-time high, um, racism and deportation kind of being the engine that drives it, and a kind of confused response on how to target it, how to fight it, how to resist it. Um, these themes also come up in the first and second adaptations of the novel Hathaway's Flash, respectively. What is it? Mobile Suit Gundam Hathaway, and then Mobile Suit Gundam Hathaway Sorcery of Nim Cersei.
Yes,
That was a
something.
mouthful. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm like, bro, the movies are kind of mouthfuls.
Right. And then I don't know if they announced when the third one's going to be coming out, but
No.
I'm looking forward to that. Oh my gosh.
No, they 100% have not announced when the third one's coming out. So we've got this, we've got the novels that inspire them. We kind of roughly know how the third one will play out. I mean, there were some
Yep.
liberties taken with particularly this movie. I think the first one a little bit too, but this one, um, kind of the whole ending is quite a bit different.
Okay.
There's maybe a commentary about, without getting into spoilers, the idea of media literacy and people being like, well, it can't end the same way because they forecasted it. And it's like, well, there's a concept in literature known as foreshadowing.
Yeah.
Apparently, in the age of AI, maybe such a concept has become lost on us, but
Oh my
that's
god.
another story.
So, just a quick question about the novels, actually, right?
Yeah.
Were the original novels written with the ending of Beltorchica's children in mind, or was it a direct sequel to the movies?
So I think the intention was with the novel Beltorchica's Children, but it also doesn't. I'm not. I think that has to be the case because I was like the only key difference as it would matter for these movies, is primarily and granted, like Hathaway doesn't seem particularly caught up in the fact that he murdered someone in cold blood. In
Right.
Char's counterattack, that doesn't seem to be part of any of his PTSD. So I don't, even though like it's very clearly like this is linked to the movie, right? Like you see Chan, not Beltorchica, in his flashbacks. Um, the new Gundam versus the Hainu, etc. Though it's also worth kind of, and another piece of background, I guess, for the Hathaway's Flash novel is I saw a really good Reddit post a while ago where someone was talking about, if I can find it, we can maybe throw it in the show notes. But it was like one of the promotional pieces for that was like I don't I might have been in like New Type magazine or something.
Hmm.
But it's the one with Hathaway, Gigi, and the Kazee in the background. It's like this is like the ultimate like end of the 80s art, right? Because like this comes out right at the end of the Cold War, right? There's so much uncertainty, which I mean, to be fair, like when you consider that background, the setting of this makes a lot more sense too, right? Like,
Right.
we've moved past, he's kind of predicting, the future a little bit that like, okay, well, what's going to be the sort of big danger to a sort of unipolar world order? Well, terrorism. And, here we are, our protagonistic force, I guess, is a terrorist organization against the Federation government.
Right. And it's again, it is to really use a pretentious term, hauntology, right? The idea that, the past does haunt the present is like the ephemeral but very like juicy, very entertaining part of like Universal Century to me, right? Where
Yeah.
the past actions play into both canon and I guess what we'll call extended works, right? And those shape like the contours for one, like what type of weaponry is used, what type of politics is driving the conflicts and whatnot. But also, we talk often here on this podcast, right, about Fukuyama's end of history thesis and how, like, interpretations of that can be applied to the current, status quo we're in, right? But then you also take that on the other side from how the creators of the original work, right, specifically Tomino, right, as a Gekiga artist, with ties to, like the radical left movement. And it's very um refreshing, or at least it's very cathartic, being a leftist in the West, who's kind of seen like the decline of the new left and then this resurgent force, how Gundam is kind of elucidating to our conditions, right? But also Tomino's like pessimism from seeing his version of the new left fail, and kind of how capitalism and neoliberalism really took to the fore in Japan, um, are very formative, not only to the original UC and like the original Gundam series, but also like it like in these extended works, like you said, right, where the Earth Federation, another aging behemoth, world-spanning empire, sounds
Yeah.
familiar, you know, has to deal with both its severe power, how it uses that power to protect the wealthy, and like you said, so what does unipolarity what drives conflict in a unipolar world? And like you said, terrorism. So I think explicitly, seeing the post 80s concern about terrorism and like how that could be viewed in a 9/11 context, but also that came up in Unicorn, like in the ovas, or not in the ovas, in the novel as well, right? Where like the Mahdi Garvey arc was supposed to be like a stand-in for 9/11 as well.
Yeah, that was a pretty explicit stand for
Okay.
9/11.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then even in the OVA, they soften that a little bit, but it's still very
Well,
obvious
they
that's
get
what it is.
well, and granted, like the Garvey stuff, like I mean, having like an Islamist in the very like secular UC felt out of place.
Double Zeta was the only one that was like, oh, by the way, Islam is in this world, which is I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but it was just
Yeah.
like a very unique Tominoism.
Yeah, well, and I was gonna say too, like it's because I think it informs the way these movies are in multiple senses. Um, but like these movies are adapting novels that Tomino wrote, 1989 through 1990. right? So
Mhm.
they're quite old, and like when they were written, they weren't. I think that you get a little bit more kind of, to the extent that there's like authentic tone. I think the written works might be a little bit more authentic, right? There's not the same level of kind of, I have to meet certain corporate standards or things
Yep.
like that, right? And I think it's partly why, like, they're really, I'm trying to think how much Gundam works have actually been adapted to animation. I don't think a lot, right? You have like the Sea to Stray OVAs, which those are basically
Commercials at that point, like, they were 2
yeah,
minutes a
like
piece.
they're not long. I guess you have Twilight Access too, which is even worse in that respect.
Right.
Um, as it's often maligned. But they don't really adapt as much. But these were like really iconic. They had, they continue the story. From Char's counterattack with Hathaway, of course, and that was something that resonated with people. You get to see sort of the culmination of Bright's arc. One of the changes from the novel, by the way, is he is ditching the stash, and the way the second movie ends is not how he was brought into the story before. So maybe things could change. Who knows? But the big thing with that is like this was always kind of like a mythical piece in the fandom. But I think also like you kind of this there's been sort of the revival of the discourse about like, oh, is this like like there's not enough like mecha action in these movies. Which there really isn't a lot, but it's like, yeah, it's because it wasn't really written with that in mind. And in fact, the big one at the end of the second movie is entirely original. There wasn't anything like that in the novels. So you have this work that I think was catered, catering. It was made for a different audience
Mhm.
than I think what you look at the preceding works were for, right? I think it's targeted in a different way, um, for all the good and maybe ill that might mean in terms of like taste.
I mean, I for my money, I thought it was pretty entertaining for the film, at least. I haven't read the novels.
No, I know I
Yeah.
greatly enjoy it, but I'm just like I know that like some people go into Gundam and anime with just certain expectations
Oh,
that are
yeah, yeah, yeah.
100% not going to be met in these movies.
Well, and I think that's the thing too, right? Like, I've probably told you this, and, like, it's my wife's joke that, like, I didn't know what to expect when you were watching Gundam, and it's like, I thought it was gonna be mech fights
Yeah,
the entire thing, and really, it's like, dudes will, like, run up on each other and get into a fist fight before anybody gets in a cockpit.
sure.
Which is what I thought was, like, really entertaining about it. It's about politics, it's about human relationships, but yeah, you're spot on there. Um, this is another question now that I'm starting to, we're getting into this. They never specify that Hathaway's a right?
Correct, and that's actually been kind of been a little bit of a revived discourse on that, like whether
Okay.
him and by extension Lane, if they're new types. Right. I think that there's enough evidence you can probably infer that they probably are, but they leave it a little ambiguous, right? Like there's the scene when their hotel is being attacked in the first movie,
Right.
and he's like, "Oh, I'm counting on your intuition, Gigi." But like, is he, or is he just sort of projecting it, right? Is he just sort of like, "I'm not like a new type," or is he actually not a new type, right? It's left ambiguous. Certainly, I would think the fact that his Gundam's missiles, or some of them, are called funnel missiles and are controlled via Saikamu, and he has no other enhancements. I would assume that kind of gives the plot away a little bit on that, but you know,
But then again, quasi Saikamu does exist. I was just thinking about that too. But
yeah, but
I
those are
think
wired.
okay, okay. And then I know it's pretty obvious that Gigi is supposed to be a new type.
Yeah,
Um and this is kind of the thing I was getting at is these replays of the same cycles of misunderstanding, right? Where Char's counterattack, spells but doesn't show it, right? That Hathaway killing Chan was his own version of central, trauma of losing Lala in that fight. At least that's one way to interpret it.
losing quests.
Yeah, losing Quest and also like him shooting at Chan, right?
Well, yeah, but it's the he seems primarily racked with like it's losing quests
Losing Quest
and
specifically. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
the Lala
Uh,
is for Char and Amuro, which is sort of the
yeah.
analog that they. I mean, they generally repeat that in most of the shows, right?
Yep.
Like the
Yep.
Tomino shows. Well, for the first universe, like through here, you have that kind of trope of, um, the new type girl who, the what could have been.
The what could have been, right? And then I think like again, like again, spoilers ahead for both movies. You knew this as soon as you hit play. Um the visual design is definitely different from what I've seen for the novels, but I think having
Yeah,
Kenneth Slag look very similar to Char, having Lane look as similar to Amuro as possible, having Gigi look pretty much bar for bar like Quest, or at least act similarly to her in some respects. Like they are really, I wouldn't say it was like an obvious like forcing that these characters are similar, but it was more like a nice nod to the fact these character types and the misunderstandings that ensue repeating is a central theme in Tomino's work.
yeah, and that you have a main character who's more conscious of it, right? Because he sees the perils. I mean, I guess I don't think he's ever like. There's never really an example of him seeing like Kenneth as Char. Um, and I'd say the redesign, like I think, I mean, the original was blonde, so like that's more. I'm actually really curious as to why they redesigned Kenneth. I'm glad they did. His old design was quite bad, in my opinion, and boring. But I don't necessarily know what the motivation was there. Lane is barely changed, but yeah, you're right. He does look a little bit more Amuro like.
Yeah, and I think like for at least in my head canon, like having the Federation as this like bizarre colorblind elite has been like something that you see in some of the adapted works, right? Where like you'll see commanding officers look wildly different names and stuff. And it kind of does hammer home the idea that the Federation is a one world government. So, at least for diversity's sake, right? Like, okay, let's bring Indian Char into this. But
Yeah,
at the same time,
or
like
Filipino. I'm not sure what he's supposed to be explicitly, but yeah.
yeah, I don't know what ethnicity Kenneth Slag is. All the sleuths, please let
The
us
the
know, please.
classic, anime ambiguously brown.
Ambiguously brown with black hair and like brown eyes, exactly. Oh, I saw like a bunch of memes of him with like be the Filipino that Japan thinks you are.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and I was gonna say too, the other thing that kind of strikes me with the color blindness too is like it's kind of indicative of a lot of works in kind of like the 70s, 80s lexicon where you have kind of like analogs of race, but not necessarily addressing actual questions of race. Like, where you're addressing the question, but not with race itself, right? You're kind of
Yeah.
you talk about certain things. There's certainly this idea of privileged versus unprivileged, right? The idea that the Federation at this point is um basically, I mean, and I think the second movie makes it especially clear. They are basically selling out the earth to the highest bidder, the people who are most politically important. They get to stay here, and everyone else, like maybe you obviously need some level of servant class here, but everyone else gets deported to space. Which it's also interesting, like when you think of kind of, again, they sort of make the parallels especially in the movies between Hathaway as like sort of the second coming of Char, whose goal was to kick everyone to space, which is also his goal to be fair. But
Right.
it's different, like where it's they kind of really wrestle with that kind of egalitarian approach versus sort of kind of selling out the sacred cradle of mankind.
No, that's 100% spot on. I think like that scene in the first movie where he gets into the cab and then he's lying about being Mafty and he's like, so what do you think of Mafty? And the taxi driver kind of just elucidates, something that's very present, and I think a lot of people can relate to today, right? That, your conflict is about things and forces beyond my comprehension at a scale beyond my comprehension. People like me are just trying to like make enough money to get their Earth work permit, right?
Yeah,
And
it's
then
like
there's
very
a
much like addressing this idea of privilege, right? That he's and kind of that's been sort of at least in the left wing space for centuries at this point, right? The idea that like the people who have the capacity to develop these high-minded ideals come from a place of privilege, whereas the people that are theoretically to benefit from them do not, and they don't necessarily connect with it.
right, and like that seemed like a big clarification of that one line in Char's Counter's attack where Amuro and Char like chasing each other around the asteroid, and Amuro's giving his whole view on like why intellectuals turn into nihilists because they can't like spread their ideals on their terms, right? Which is the actual task of organizing, right? You can't just come in with the theory. You have to kind of expose people to it and have people apply, but that's besides the point.
Yeah,
Um that kind of does bring us back to like that idea of the Earth Federation does indeed exist to protect an elite. And even though that like the reality of environmental degradation is ever present in like Gundam stories, the idea that like anything that's preserved will be walled off and there's a limit to access, you're seeing that in parts of the world, right? Where access
yeah,
to quiet spaces, access to nature and clean water are starting to become, luxuries in a sense, right? And it is something to be said that in the Gundam timeline, or at least in the Universal Century timeline, who got sent to space and who got to stay on Earth always ended up being a matter of class and prestige and privilege,
yeah.
which again just applies several parallels today.
Right.
Um,
The other thing too I was gonna say is like, the environmental degradation theme has always kind of been there. It's never really it usually isn't visually depicted the best. I
yeah,
think the second movie gives you maybe a little hint of that when you're seeing some of the places in Australia, um, that are, that to be fair, probably already a desert. Um, so it doesn't really, quite have that parallel, right? But like, it's kind of like when Hathaway's talking about like, oh, we've got to, protect this planet for 1,000 years from now, and it's like you see like these beautiful cascades, like the ocean is clean as a whistle, like it's it does kind of feel a little juxtaposed, like there is kind of a clash between how beautiful they make these films look and maybe the reality that they are trying to convey.
no, 100% spot on. Like that's the kind of stuff where my Universal Century headcanon is so crazy. I do think Bandai should hire me, but at the same time, there's no reason to create another Dave Filoni. There's no reason to do that. There's no need.
I mean, I think there's plenty of need. There's definitely some some finances that they can arrange that.
Oh my gosh. So another thing I was gonna get at with probably the first movie and then at least like the first part of the second half was darkness and like a lot of the fights and a lot of like critical scenes happening in the peak of night.
Yes.
Is that supposed to be thematic of something?
I think it's more so thinking of how I thought it was more so from like a practical like battlefield perspective.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe the final fight in the second movie arguably has I think that like because it's not just that it's in like darkness, it's that it comes into the light by the end of
Yeah,
it.
like literally the
That
sun is
has to be
rising at that point.
yeah, like that
Exactly.
has to be thematic. Because it also seems to mark a character shift, right? So I think that one is. I think the other one's not as much, right? I mean, I think, the one the fight with like the messer in like the urban area in the first movie. Maybe some of that is just kind of like it also adds to sort of like the horror of it, but it also just kind of makes sense that like, well, yeah, if you're gonna stage some sort of terrorist distraction, you can do it at night, um, right? And then it was just there for a extraction type deal.
Right. And I think another thing that an advantage of doing it in the dark is it shows just how high power has become at this point in the timeline. So at least
How
it
what?
aids in this how powerful beam weaponry has gotten in the at this point.
Yeah,
So you really feel like just how palpable like a fight is at that point. That one scene in the first part where they're running through that part as like the Messer and the Gustav Karl are fighting,
hmm
and just like sheer bloody murder, right? It's actually
yeah.
terrifying. And then I think in that same vein too, right? Not hmm, I
It's
think we
showing,
can
like,
riff
the
off the
cost of this conflict, right? Like,
yeah.
that he's these are the methods that he's choosing to use, and this is the real human cost of it, right?
Hmm.
Right there in that moment, the Federation cabinet's not being threatened, right? The cabinet ministers aren't being harmed in this process. Um, we'll see if they are, in the 3rd movie. Um, there may or may not have been a certain outcome in the novel, who knows?
Yeah, I mean, okay, like to parse through like the plot for anyone who's still listening and hasn't seen it yet, like Hathaway is Mafty, who's a terrorist, trying to do the same plot as Char to get mankind off of the planet, except not by dropping another asteroid on the Earth. It's he doesn't really prescribe it. He is just saying that like the Federation is the problem, which is the more mature analysis. Um, he went to Anaheim to go get the Kasai Gundam, but couldn't resist hopping a flight or getting on a flight to see the Earth Federation ministers' faces, right?
Yeah.
And that's I think the unique thing here is that he's clearly like a capable revolutionary terrorist, however you choose to see him, and yet deeply impulsive, deeply emotional.
Yeah. And it comes through probably more so in especially the second movie as it pertains towards his relationships with women. He has I guess he already had a girlfriend that he doesn't really seem to be too into anymore. Kelia or whatever,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
but like it's like the thoughts of Gigi like really kind of rack through him, right? It's like the questioning of his convictions aren't so much that, oh, he shouldn't be killing the cabinet of the Earth Federation. It's that he really wants to lay some pipe, basically, for lack of a better analogy, right? It's like he really really likes this girl. That's kind of tearing at not necessarily his resolve, but like his psyche is definitely impacted by this
Well,
distraction.
and there is that aspect of it too that he is horned up for her. He did that's
Yeah.
undeniable, but also like um
There's
his
that
mental
deeper,
stability
like,
is
connection too, like, beyond just the horned
right.
up, like
Oh yeah, no, 100% because it's like um his mental stability is clearly like shown like okay, yes, he's a capable, operator. Yes, he's always behind enemy lines, but also he's clearly dealing with some kind of fracturing psychologically, right?
yeah,
And it comes through with the fact that like the events of Char's counterattack have left him with some kind of PTSD, right? It's safe
yeah.
to say that he doesn't take his meds. Shame on you, Hathaway. You did that to yourself. Um and that kind of increasing instability and that kind of suppression that he does of his own emotions, his own desires in trying to be like I don't know, some kind of eco-fascist bodhisattva.
Yeah,
in a sense, right? Like,
sure.
I wouldn't call him full on eco fascist yet, but he definitely has like a
Well,
very strange.
it's interesting because it's like there's that debate he has of Gigi in the first movie where she kind of argues that that's the route he should take to an extent, right? Like instead of committing acts of terror, you should just kind of lead mankind as a unitary, presumably somewhat fascist coded figure.
Right, which is like the whole thing with Char, right? Is that he was really leaning into like the Zionic fascist imagery, his overall method on like, okay, how do we get people away from the earth to protect the environment? Oh, we'll cause nuclear winter. Why not? Why not? Which is why I use the term eco-fascist, but like Hathaway's politics are bizarre, right? It's you could I guess say eco-terrorism as a term. Um he's
Yeah,
anti-federation, but like I get that like assassinating high profile Earth Federation figures would cause some kind of unrest or cause some kind of instability, but it's like
it seems divorced from his actual goals.
yeah, not only
Like
that,
the
it's like what's the
ideology
theory of
doesn't
change?
seem.
Yeah, what's the
Yeah.
theory of change here, right? Like what are you still going to use the instruments of the Earth Federation to get mankind off of the earth? Like what's the play here?
Right, yeah, like, it is kinda weird where it's like there's not like as the theory of change doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. It does and I mean, you get the suggestion because MAFD is, as an organization, is supported by I think it's some Earth Federation general.
Yeah, some type of wealthy backer. I think what was his name?
His name is
The weird
escaping
Dutch
me, let's
name. I
see.
know what it is. They have a man in the shadows. I forgot. There is a Dutch man in the shadows supporting this. We don't know why.
Yeah, and it's kinda weird too because like, I don't not even the novels ever really explain that because they like there's nothing after this. Really, I mean, the Universal Century continues, but like in terms of like any work that builds from this point, um, F91 was pretty much like yeah, it was still in Universal Century, but it was pretty much a clean break from this. Other than like, hey, you've got Jagans, the Federation is still around. Here's some clop classes. Like, you know what I mean? Like, other than like
Yeah.
some of the visuals, there really isn't like it doesn't continue these themes. Maybe partly because like, why are you going to continue the themes off of some novels that you wrote as like kind of this, you know, Bandai's not controlling me in this instance. Um, but yeah, there's a guy who's supporting this. I don't remember his name. Um, and I don't like with the fact that he's supporting this, you'd think he has some objectives, but those aren't particularly clear. I mean, historically, we've seen in other side stories, particularly Unicorn, that there was always kind of this toleration of Xeon remnants as kind of a way to perpetually maintain like the military, right? That like, hey, well,
Yeah.
you don't want to get blown up by a Zaku, so hey, we totally need this new mobile suit model, and we need to replace all of the existing ones with this, just for safe measure. Whereas it doesn't really like I don't know if that's the objective here. If this is just sort of like, or if he has a committed ideology, if he sees like some role in this, it's not entirely clear.
Quacksilver. That was the guy's name.
Yeah,
Quacksilver. Um
maybe
and
with this theory of change, maybe he is a bit of a quack.
right, and I think Quacksilver is, if I'm not mistaken, is Dutch for like witch doctor or something like that. Which is even crazier, right? But maybe they'll get
Maybe
into
that
it.
maybe that yeah, I was like, maybe that was always, like, the objective. He actually has a picture on the wiki. I've never seen this before.
Interesting. Interesting. So yeah, there is a mysterious Dutchman known as Quacksilver supporting this, implied to be some kind of like rich Federation aligned
He's a general,
person or
but
general. Okay, okay.
yeah.
And like I'm guessing that's a code name. I'm guessing that's a code name. Um
Yeah, it'd be a little it would be a little weird if it was, just
that's his actual name.
like I'm
Um
just everyone in this organization knows who I am. Hopefully none of them gets taken alive.
well and that's the thing about the other thing about Mafty, right, is there's a bunch of competing orgs or like allied orgs that also bear the title. And we actually see like some of these other Earth Federation resistance movements not only take like brutal violence at the hand of the Federation, and the Federation's trying to like basically shut down any evidence of their war crimes getting out. Sounds familiar. I don't know why. But also, you have those same rebels working with Hathaway, but also like really critiquing him and actually saying that like, yeah, you guys have mobile suits. You're kind of exempt from the horrors we have to see fighting on the ground
Against said mobile suits.
against said mobile suits. And then like there's literally like a whole part of the movie where like and it's because it's at night, there's that little like sinking feeling of like, did they shoot this in the dark, so, or like did they animate this in the dark so that it's implied that what we're seeing is pretty horrible. And like we're talking like straight up war crimes are happening at that facility, and they're like,
Oh yeah, yeah.
oh,
That there's a lot, and I think the novel goes into it a little bit more, but they kind of took the I think appreciated imply not show approach.
right. And I think it's because of what the world has witnessed these past couple of years. The symbolism is very obvious. I don't think they had to go that far.
And at the same time, because again, this is an adaptation of something pretty old at this point. All of this is kind of, time's a flat circle.
Yep, unfortunately. Um so because we don't know about whether or not Hathaway in this work is meant to be a new type, um it is obvious that Gigi
How are
is
you going to
some
bring in
type of,
autism now?
well, no, because I mean the thing about like the new type autism angle, I do it right, and that one scene I'm very mentally ill about, or actually I should say it fixed my mental illness in some ways. Um the first movie has this flashback scene of almost like scene for scene recreation of Kenneth's like coming in on horseback to deal with like
Yeah.
casualties after that battle in Davao. And you see Gigi like run to him, and like
Hmm.
Hathaway relives. We're seeing like a reanimated scene from Char's counterattack from his perspective.
Yep.
And then they do this again, like replay again with the final battle in part 2, which, my god, probably one of the best mobile suit fight sequences we've seen so far, right? Um, the Elysius, which was like kind of a prototype of the Penelope from the first movie.
Yep.
That was a new creation. Having, instead of the Odysseus Gundam inside it, you have a mass production type, or what is it? A mass production new
Yeah,
Gundam.
mass
That was
production new Gundam, which is something that had not been in like I mean, it was in like video games. It was an MSV. It had never
yeah,
been like portrayed in any story. No, no. I guess technically there's a manga variant, but for the most part, pretty much untouched there. Pretty much untouched in most places. Um, so it was really cool, kind of like seeing that sort of fan servicey, but also it plays really well into it, right? Because it's and granted, yes, the way its armor happens to break off doesn't really make any sense.
not
But
at all. It did
it
not.
gives it gives it the exact silhouette of the original New Gundam, which kind of evokes the idea that he is fighting, the ghost of Amuro in that moment.
Right. And you have like you said, there was a vibe shift in Hathaway's character because the sun is coming up during that fight. And
Yeah.
you kind of have this like, instead of him passively feeling a victim to his past. Now he's actively fighting the ghost of Amuro, both in the sense of Lane Aim as a Federation pilot. I wouldn't call him an ace. He's more of a test pilot from what we know. Um, you can
Yeah,
definitely
and also
imagine.
someone who probably, again, kind of similar, probably a new type, but not explicitly confirmed. And also, it's worth noting this entire scene was added. It was not in the novel.
Yeah, that's what I was. That's what I was thinking. Like this is completely original. That
Yeah.
confrontation with Amuro didn't happen in the novel. Um,
Well, I think it serves a few different purposes, right? Like obviously, we're kind of emphasizing the Hathaway end, but it also gives Lane something to do because he's kind of a non-entity in the novel, and in the movies he doesn't do a ton. They added like all these like little moments where you kind of see like his deal, right? And I think you can kind of what's helpful too is you sort of see the parallels where he is kind of we don't maybe make mentally just one to one Amuro Ray, right? But he is very similar to Amuro. It's just we don't necessarily because he's in the antagonist role because the Federation is portrayed as particularly bad in this particular story, right? It's not, kind of in 0079, it's sort of the well-intentioned but maybe incompetent bureaucracy that is
right,
bad
just the
about
big
it.
green machine, like in the
Right, but
first part.
yeah, but it's not, like, actively bad, like, there's nothing, like, that they're portrayed as actively doing, that's negative beyond sort of, like, not giving Xeon independence seemingly, um, so, like, that is different, and I think, like, seeing him kinda serve this corrupt system, even though he's, I think, ideologically very similar to Amuro, um, like, where you hear him kinda complain about, especially, like, original Amuro, where he complain about, "I don't wanna get hit by adults anymore,"
Right.
um Yeah, and then
Uh,
if obviously get kind of getting into the Hathaway stuff again, if you want to continue.
yeah, and I mean for sure. Like the thing about Lane Name, like you said, you can imagine like a Federation pilot hearing stories about Amuro and being like, "Yeah, that's going to be me one day." It does speak to that idea of like the Federation as a bureaucracy. What the fuck are we doing here?
Yeah, it doesn't feel like that's his deal. Is that he was inspired either?
Yeah,
He's
he
just
just
someone
thought it
who's
would be
very
cooler.
similar. Yeah,
Yeah. So yeah, I think at that scene you see the armor fall off of the Elysius. The mass production new somehow has the same silhouette as the new Gundam when it had the funnels on and some of the armor
yep,
on. And then you see like Hathaway confronting Amuro's ghost. And again, is it new type resonance that's causing him to have this experience? Is it PTSD? Let's see if part three shines more light on that, but you can view it in both those ways.
yeah,
And you kind of see like another stronger articulation of like Amuro's point of view from Char's counterattack, which is almost a softer version of like Banagher Lynx's perspective in Unicorn, which again, Hathaway's Flash written way before Unicorn, if I'm not mistaken.
yeah.
You could argue that the plot of Unicorn is a nothing burger, although it's still great. In
I
the
think
sense
if
of
you're gonna
like nothing
argue,
changes about the universe.
yeah, which I mean, it's what happens when you write a midquill, I guess.
Yeah, right. And it's like it again, it was cool. I don't give a fuck. But like Unicorn was a distillation of Amuro's ideology of like if you just fight back, something good could happen. Why don't we try it? Even so, right? And you kind of see
Mhm.
Amuro like really re-articulating that sense of like I still believe in, human potential. I still believe that human beings, if given the chance, could be good. Not a bad
Yeah, and
worldview.
I mean his perspective on it, I always felt was very passive.
Yeah.
Like in the sense that it's like, well, like we'll just have faith in mankind to fix itself, basically. Um, but yeah, he's not the radical reformer. Which again, like that's if you juxtapose that to someone like Lane, he is just you know, a Federation soldier fighting for what he seems to think would be a better world. Um, and to be fair, I mean, your opponent is a terrorist organization, and one with maybe not super clear ideological goals.
Yeah, like you want to project a kind of noble revolutionary view onto Mafty sometimes, but in practice, I
You do
can't
it
feel
because
that way about.
you do it because it's their perspective that you're primarily seeing. You're seeing this human side, but like you kind of like when you think of like the way they operate, especially where it's like the fact that when they're talking to the public that seems kind of sympathetic to them is like, man, I wish they would just kill these manhunters. And they're like, well, yeah, manhunters are kind of doing what we want them to do, just not enough of it. So it's like their goals are not totally aligned with what the public is perceiving about them.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, like maybe a few people here and there are happy to see the Federation take a hell, but the core issue, which is like who gets access to like a good life on Earth and who
Yeah.
is
Or
kind
life
of,
on Earth, period.
yeah, is dictated by class. And Hathaway clearly doesn't seem to see the issue there. Um, so I don't know.
Well, he sees the issue. It's just that, like, from his perspective, it's you take a totalistic approach, right? It's you achieve equality by taking everyone off of Earth.
Yeah, yeah. Which again, how do you stop those problems from being replicated in the space colonies? No clear answer there. No answer at all
Yeah,
there.
and I think a lot of that too is, I mean, I don't necessarily know that Tomino's perspective is that Hathaway is correct, necessarily, but
Right.
he never, like, when I think about it, I mean, how much do we ever really see of like space colony governments, period, in his works?
Um,
Like, we have Xeon in the original.
I mean, basically
We've
all
got
we
like
have
weird
is double
random places,
zeta.
like, yeah.
And double zeta basically implies that like the colonies, if you're not connected politically, you're working the scrapyard. You are a
Yeah.
disenfranchised child who
Right,
takes
'cause
on to piracy. Like, I don't know.
or you're, I mean, like, on some, like, weird backwards backwater, like, Moon.
Right, right. Where like, yeah, the colonies are
Like,
kind of
there's
a
the
free
places
for
that are
all.
just, like, completely forgotten, that are just, like, on their own, like, weird little, like, independent states functionally.
Right. And like Moon is like one of the most interesting examples of that. Which maybe we need a Moon Gundam anime. I think that's where we need to go. We need a Moon Gundam anime. Bring Amuro and Char back for the ride as well. But yeah, just these ideas of like they live in a space colony, the machinery's set to go, and they kind of reverted back to the Bronze Age.
Yeah. Right.
So oh shoot, yeah, let's wrap up the thread about that final scene. So
Yeah.
then I think he beats Lane Aim after basically finding the resolve to resist Amuro. And really his hatred for Amuro is based in the fact that he holds Amuro personally responsible for killing Quest. Or for he holds him responsible for Quest's death. Am I mistaken in that?
I think that's part of it. I will say, and I think that's a change from the novels a bit, is especially in the second movie, he feels like, I mean, he's still haunted by Quest, but he doesn't seem as dominated by her. Whereas before, I think he had a certain like tendency to kind of feel like a little bit of an incel when it came to like, oh, it's this, like unrequited love that he had for her, and he's just his entire life has been dictated by that. Um, it seems like there's part of that. I think some of it too is not just that Amuro failed to do that, but I think it's kind of just that passivity in general, right? That the world has not improved seemingly in any way since, the Axis shock, that he had
Right.
accomplished a miracle and it didn't mean anything. I think a lot of that is kind of what's going on with him and Amuro. And I will say, like, some of the visuals too. I mean, like, obviously he kind of just completely mogs the the new Gundam, um, which but like especially like the like when he's like going in for the kill, right? Where like the beam
Yeah.
saber is in the cockpit, Lane is like trying desperately to like stay away from it. And
Right.
then, like, in like the one wholesome moment you get out of Federation forces in the entire movie, his friends surrender and say, "Please just don't kill him. You can do anything you want."
That's like
And then GG leaves with him.
Right, and it's like again, the music choice, I was very confused.
Oh,
Why would you use Sweet Child
Sweet
of
Child of
Mine?
Mine.
Why would you use Snooze by SZA? And then it's like, no, they were great music choices because like the movie literally opens up with all of Hathaway's psychosexual drama, and then having SZA music play right after that, great choice. Having
Yeah,
Gigi jump into the cockpit and kiss him, and then you have the guitar riff, amazing
yeah,
choice. Well
yeah.
done, well played.
It felt
Um,
like you were watching like an AMV or something, but yeah,
I'm with it, and I think, but now you've really opened the door to like probably what's touched on in the first, and definitely like throughout the background of the second, which is probably like a 21st century take on Tominoism and Tomino's somewhat. I wouldn't call him full on sexist so much as like it's so dated and it's so crass that like it touches on some realities of human sexuality, but it's also coming from just like a regressive place to start from.
yeah. Like if you were having a conversation with someone like saying the stuff that a lot of his works imply, you'd be like, "Hold on a second." Um,
And
because
then, but
yeah,
but then if you like stack it up to like other stuff of the time, you're like, oh wow, this is bizarrely feminist somehow. I don't know how that he did that.
yeah, it's kind of like uh, I mean, I don't know if that I would associate with any particular wave of feminism or anything
Yeah,
like that, but
yeah.
it is kind of this like, when you especially in Japan, I would imagine especially is probably maybe even more regressive
Oh yeah.
um
Oh yeah.
than the United States in that respect, especially in the times that he's writing this. But it's like, it's the women in Tomino's works are interesting because I think that he does write some very strong women, but they are also they're strong in ways that very much connect to like very traditional roles in some respects, right? I mean, they will probably have to do like a Zeta one at some point, right? I mean, that's one we have seen, but like, I mean, the way like I think of, kind of they contrast, sort of Emma and Rekua, right? Where it's like, Rekua's position feels kind of regressive,
Yeah.
um, but pseudo progressive in some ways too. So you're right. Like, yeah, it
And
just
also
gets a
just
little
like and Rekoa's whole arc of like being quite literally manipulated by an evil man as playing into that. Like that
yeah,
is also like a sympathetic lens at the same time that's like, no, we see her being manipulated and we feel bad for her through it. It's not like, but
yeah,
it's bizarrely mature for the time and for the target audience, and yet because it's coming from a regressive place, there's just a bizarre seasoning patina to it. And what you see in like both of these adaptations is like with the benefit of them understanding that there will be an international audience, I think with the benefit of, you know, having people other than Tomino in the writers' room,
sure.
um, you have a more visible treatment. And this isn't to say that like any of the characters are good feminists. That's not what this is, but rather they
I think Kenneth's a
allow.
great feminist.
I disagree. I think Kenneth's like the type of dude to say women in gender studies. Hell yeah, I love pussy, dog. He seemed like that. He's
I
that
love
type of
studying
guy.
women. Yeah. Like,
No, but I think it's like because this is like the root of like Tomino's what I would call sexual progressive view, right? Is that he understands what makes men pathetic. And if men are pathetic, why have a patriarchy at all? That's like he again,
yeah.
great viewpoints. You don't have the theoretical framework to do that maturely, but that's okay. This is an anime. With that being said, you know, you have like quite literally Kenneth Slag as like a horn dog, cannot stop hitting on women. He's like, oh, Gigi doesn't want to pull up to my place. That's fine. The air hostess from the one flight, I called her.
Well, and like it's implied there's a lot off screen too, because like
Yeah,
when like Lane and some of the other soldiers are chatting, and Lane's as he's more passive just kind of throughout the movie, but even like during those, they're just like, oh, he brought another one in today, like to an army base, right? Like
right.
he's
It's
like
like
in
you're a
charge of
commanding
this.
officer, and like it's implied, right? Like he's basically in charge of hunting Mafty, so he's like high profile, very like high ranking officer, and he's cavorting with women instead of doing his job.
Yeah, well, and I think like the unit he's in charge of, I mean the Cersei unit, but it was the Kimberly unit. I think it's like that entire like Southeast Asian like theater. And I think it actually shows up in some earlier works.
Yeah, it shows up
Um,
in what is it, Stardust Memory.
yeah, yeah, because I was watching a clip of something recently. I was like, wait a second, um, and which would make sense because Stardust Memory starts in Torrington Base
Yep,
in
yep.
Australia.
So it's like, yeah, Kenneth Slag as like a Char stand-in, where it's like this guy's horny for no fucking reason.
Well, and like
Um,
kind of like unashamedly so, right? Like Char really isn't right, and that's kind of in Zeta, like that's kind of the issue with Rekwa, right? Is she's looking for someone to treat her like a woman, and this guy's just like, oh yeah, neat. Uh,
which is funny as hell. So she gets manipulated by the man from Jupiter,
yeah.
and then Char's like, okay, I learned my lesson. Now, when an impressionable woman comes to me, I will manipulate her into piloting a mobile armor.
Yeah, but, like, doing so in, like, the least, like, giving her as little as possible
Right,
in the
right.
process somehow, right? Just like, "Oh, yeah," like, I mean, he's every scene with him and Quest, he comes across as and I really noticed this the most recent time I rewatched CCA, he comes across as, like, the most disinterested person on the planet.
Well, and that's the thing about abuse, right? Is especially in emotional abuse and manipulation is that what's called the love bombing effect, where like just a little attention to an impressionable person
Yeah.
um, is what causes the interest in said manipulative or abusive person, right? So then getting anything from that person at all is what causes the fixation, right? So when you take that logic, um, it's not shocking, but you are right that it's like, why does this look like that one scene in not Goodfellas? What's the one in Vegas? I think it was Casino, right? Where it's like Sharon Stone's character is being very like maliciously used by her ex-boyfriend, whatever this guy's deal was. A lot of those Quest and Char scenes read like that, where it's very
Yeah,
obvious this man is using this young woman, but she's happy to go along with it because her dad is a piece of shit.
right.
Um, to that point too, actually, like Lane and Camille give me some similar vibes too, where it's like seeing the adults or like your commanding officers cavorting around and being really unprofessional when it comes to like just basically flirting on deck.
Yeah.
That was another similarity that came up and all that. And then I think with Gigi literally being like accounts courtesan, I think is the safe word to use here. And it's
Yeah.
like she is I don't know, a sugar baby. So let's call it. I don't know. That's probably the best way to describe it.
Well, it's weird because it's like she doesn't come across as like manipulative, which is what we tend to it was I think what people would tend to associate with something like that.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, and I mean it's weird because like there's like the initial scene where like because like in the first movie you're kind of like not sure if she's like just talking out her ass about this relationship or if she's actually serious, and then they
and then by
confirm it
the
in the
second
second
movie, we
movie.
see she has a lot of money because of that.
Well, we didn't know if it was like just like okay, yeah, she's clearly well off, but like, is this really why or whatever? But then you see the scenes of that.
Yeah,
But it's like weird because like the first flashback of it, it seems, and I maybe I feel like there has to be some type of Stockholm syndrome or something with her, because the first scene with them seems very creepy, and even like she doesn't seem into it. But then like when she's like, oh, I'm gonna like break this off and abandon him. Just like, oh, I feel so bad for him. I feel so bad that I'm not emotionally like committed to him and stuff like that.
right.
And which is weird, and it's not like she's saying this like to like. It seems very much like internal monologue, or sometimes talking to herself. But it's not, what I mean. It's not there to like justify this to anyone else.
Right. And also like what we see of her patron is also very mysterious as well, where like he I don't know if it's implied that he's dead or not, but towards
No,
the
he's
end
still alive
he's still
because
alive, right? But he's like watching all the screens and shit and just like stuck in a chair.
yeah, I mean he's very old. It sounded like he was basically kind of preparing like his final affairs and stuff like that, has issues with
Okay.
his family. It seemed to be like one of those types of issues.
Okay, okay. That at least explains that. But like having Gigi, like kind of fight for two people's attention is a clear like, parallel to the way that like Quest was competing for several people's attention. Kind of
She's a
in
lot
pursuit,
better at actually
but
getting it
she's
though.
she's a lot better at it, and also not as brazen or as somehow less manipulative in the process, but still like you can tell that like she wants the attention of somebody, and because she can't get it, she'll settle for whoever's in her orbit next. It's okay to be problematic like that. I think it makes for good storytelling. And it's between Hathaway and Kenneth. And when Hathaway, again, now here comes his psychosexual stuff. We don't know at least if you don't know anything about Hathaway or you knew nothing about the novel, you didn't know that he was single or not when he first meets Gigi.
Yeah, you'd probably just default assume single.
Right. And
But
then the way that he brushes Gigi off when she's trying to make advances on him, it doesn't come off as like super incelly. It's more of just like, oh, that's kind of weird. But also there is this like weird like will they won't they tension the whole time, and
yeah,
you kind of see him like wanting to act on it but not, and also like being suspicious of her because he is a terrorist or revolutionary.
she figures
And
out pretty quick.
right, she nails it on like as soon as she meets him, and he himself can't decide why he's avoiding her. Is it because he's suspicious? Is it because of his unresolved trauma about Quest? Is it because of Kelia waiting for him back home? Um,
Is it because he's genuinely interested in her?
is it because he's genuinely interested in her? He doesn't know his own feelings, so he does an amazing job of kind of fixating on the mission and acting like nothing's getting to him. But by the second movie, we see his breakdowns, and it's like, yeah, no, this guy's clearly not dealing with it okay. And you kind
Well,
of
I
see,
think it's interesting too, right? Because that first movie, it's like there's all of this happening, but he's distracted by his mission. Whereas here, it's the opposite, right? He's doing the mission, and now he's distracted by
by all this stuff, which
yeah,
again, relatable. I'm sure somewhat
yeah,
relatable in that sense, right?
yeah.
Um, and then like his relationship with Kelly, it's like there's clearly nothing to make it appear like it wasn't warm at some point. And some of the flashbacks after they break up really imply that it was a warm relationship and that they both kind of bonded through needing those work like living permits. and then getting involved with like Quacksalver's resistance and Mafty and all that, right?
Well,
Um,
it's weird too because I think like she was partly what got him into the Mafia organization as much, yet she also just doesn't seem very into it at all.
right. It's almost like she was in it for like some kind of other reason, and then what the movement ended up becoming transformed kind of out of her control at some point. But is she leaving because she doesn't stand with where they're at? Does she disagree with Hathaway on tactics? Did the stress of seeing him fight life or death all the time get to her? Or was it the fact that she kind of knew that they were falling out of love and all those stresses were playing a role? I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, so I would say that she's definitely presented compellingly, even though she didn't get a lot of screen time. I think because she's shown with short hair, and then we don't realize that she's basically been shaving her head every time they fight, which is, that's I feel for you, girl. But this guy doesn't take his meds. He kind of needs to be slapped for that. Come on, man.
It's I don't think
Uh,
it's ever clear what those meds are for, right? Are they sleeping meds?
um, I don't know if it's like yeah, they're never imply. They never tell us what those meds are. I'm not a psych, so I couldn't tell you what it is, but you know, they do work. Take them.
Well, it's just
So
well, it's like interesting to say because I was like thinking like when I was watching it too, I was like honestly like feel like drugs have a very like or meds period like have a very negative implication in Gundam media generally, right? Like
right.
they're usually associated with like either increasing the senses at the expense of yourself, like with a cyber new type deal, or you had the what were they called? The human computers in Seed, where they
Yeah, yeah,
were
yeah.
very much. I mean, like they every scene they're in, they're complete druggies, is how they're
You
portrayed.
had you have a bunch of that stuff too. Even like in not War in the Pocket, 8th MS team, when Xeon's trying to flee the Earth, you have a bunch of guys methed out for like
Yeah,
their last fights and stuff. So there's also probably a cultural component, and like
sure.
they they try to make this like real reach sometimes. It's like, well, Hathaway's Asian. He probably has some hangups about taking medication. It's like I'll believe that when I see it, but
Yeah.
um,
But yeah, I was like
there's
that was like one thing where I was just when I was watching, I was like, well, like and I can't remember if it was something to like the he said that it dulls his senses, which like obviously if you're like a new type adjacent individual, that doesn't seem great either. So it just I was like, yeah, like this isn't necessarily the meat. Like anytime I see some type of substance that you're supposed to take in Gundam, I'm a little suspicious of what it's for.
right, which is again fair. That's fair on multiple levels. The other thing I was thinking too is like Hathaway is kind of cracked as a pilot. He's really good.
Yeah.
And it's like again, he's like you said, he mogged a Federation test pilot with like advanced machinery. Like the Elysius is a
Yeah.
full-on mobile armor, and he's piecing up Lane the entire fight. It's kind of brutal. So that idea of like an unrestrained, unmedicated Hathaway, um, knowing that like I would be a worse mobile suit pilot if I was not doing things my way. Um, it doesn't speak to any like Char Amuro vibe, but it does speak to like all the different like Titans or Xeon like ace pilots of the week,
Yeah.
where they would have like some kind of like irredeemable quality or some type of hard ass behavior.
Yeah, like especially like the ones that you weren't supposed to be like, oh hey, like, war's bad guys. Like this person was half decent.
Right.
Now they're dead.
Right. No, I cannot think of a single redeemable member of the Titans except for Lieutenant Emma, right? So
Well, in terms of anyone who like stayed with them, I mean, gosh, yeah, pretty much no one. I mean, because you had like, I would say like the cyber new types, just because they were like victims of
that's true.
circumstance.
That's true.
But in terms of like anyone else who was like, yeah, like I'm just here for the ride, like and none of them like I mean some of them that might have like I mean like someone like Mauer or Mawa might have been a little bit, but that was just because oh she was kind of nice, but she was nice to like really fucking terrible people. So
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. So, all in all, before we get to the Tomino interview, um, how have you been feeling about these new adaptations, and how excited are you for the third part coming out?
So I really like these. In terms of
Yeah,
excitement for the third part, I don't know. It's like it's couched in the fact that like it's gonna take forever.
that's true. It's gonna take forever. We don't know. Like it seems like all the different arms of like the companies that make Gundam don't talk to each other.
Well, now Bandai is like kind of doing this stuff in house now, I believe. Um, which has a lot of people worried for different reasons.
Right.
In terms of quality and whatnot. And then I think you know when you get into a scenario where the people making the money directly on the merch are now in charge of the IP.
Right.
You know, like I'm not saying you can't get good art from that. I think that there's definitely good examples of that, but you kind of wonder, you know, to what extent, like, you know, like other than the fact that they're kind of committed to, like, are you going to get anything else like Hathaway? The way a lot of things are made now, does that mean you're going to, and like I quite enjoyed Witch from Mercury and G-Quox, but the fact that they were like half and the length of like the normal Gundam series, and then the second one was
Right.
half of that. You know, like there's just a certain way that media is made and consumed now that, and to be fair, maybe that's not really a studio fault. It's just kind of a you know just general fault that I'm a little worried. I am excited for the movie. It's just I'm not like you know like oh man, can't wait for this to come out because I just know it's gonna be like God, I hope it's by the end of the decade. But I just don't know, right? And it's weird too because I remember like some of the stuff that they said, like, oh, like they had to because this was part of the delays of this was that they according to them, they had to go to Australia to you know they had to see the rock, they had to see Ayers Rock, which you get a great view of it in this movie, don't you?
That's true. Yeah.
Um, that was a little bit of sarcasm because it
I know.
was
I know.
dark as hell.
No, I just.
So but the fact, and I'm like, you know, part of me like wonders, like, is like the production team using the movie as like an excuse to money launder?
No, that's completely
Like,
fair.
let's just
That's completely
schedule
fair.
our vacation from this.
How many times are we gonna see corporations around the world do like we need the budget to do a glorified retreat? Um
Right. I
no,
mean,
and
like, you know, more power to you, right? It's an industry where you're generally abused. So, like, hey, if like the animators are doing it, I guess they deserve it. But it is kind of like, I'm like, did we really like what did you gain from being there in person that you could not have done?
no, I mean there's a ton of stuff like that going around now, right? Where it's like the Gundam AI stuff that no one asked for, the metaverse stuff that no one asked for.
Oh God, yeah.
Um, there's a bunch of stuff like that it's right to be worried about the direction things are going because private equity ruins everything, and if it gets close, does it infect your favorite thing next, right? And it's like okay, it's like GQucks having connections with like Amazon, right? Either for Amazon for streaming or
Yeah.
Amazon Studios for like helping produce, right? Did that play a role in how the series was handled or how it was kind of rushed and ended
Yeah.
quickly? Who knows?
Who knows?
Um, you take into account then the fact that like the live action movie is with Netflix. Now already the silver lining is hey, maybe this is canceled before it even makes it past pre-production.
I
But
mean,
then
dude,
like
it's been in pre-production for like
for years and like I would argue that like li- forget the idea of like adapting anime in general in live action, just Gundam conceptually, right? there's so much that has to happen for you to suspend your disbelief in an animated context. Now you're going to translate that to the big screen. Good fucking luck. And it's like, oh, we'll just animate that. It's not about the animation of
Well,
like
that's the thing. What's what I don't understand with like, and I mean, it's a weird cultural perception, right? When it comes to quote unquote live action or quote unquote live action, right? Like, think of like the Disney quote unquote live action adaptations of The Lion King. Those aren't real lions.
right.
You know,
Right.
it's just
It's like why are we adapting
it's
this?
photo real animation. Which like if we're doing that, like why does it matter? And supposedly the movie's not an adaptation. It does seem like it'll be in the Universal Century because we did have some set leaks of some
Like
EFF
EFSF
trucks.
stuff. Yeah.
So I don't know. I have very little faith in it for a number of reasons.
For a number of reasons, we can get into Sydney Sweeney being a Nazi and all that. But like that's the thing I'm trying to get at, right? Is so much of the world of business right now, the corporate world, the people who America dictates like, well, I think we need a president who's all run a business before. Like, I'll tell you what happens in businesses. They just hear somebody did something and they copy it without researching if it made any money for that person, let alone if it's going to make any for them,
Yeah.
right? That's the thing with AI rollouts you're seeing, right? This company has Copilot. Oh, let's get Copilot. You guys have Claude. Let's get Claude now, right? Like it's baby brain stuff. But then if you look at like where all these legacy franchises are, right? Oh, Marvel got live action adaptations and made major money off of that. Let's try it out. Let's try it
Yeah.
out.
Well,
Let's
and
just break
I don't
into a
even.
market.
Well, and some of it is like it's a certain laziness, too, right? Like and to be fair, like I mean, even if it's an original project, I don't exactly have a ton of faith in the creatives involved, anyways. Um, so that's just a whole separate thing. Though I was thinking, especially when you mentioned it, I was like, we should do like a whole like video or a whole episode just complaining about AI because I was just thinking of I mean, obviously, there's like I could speak, more academically about it in the academy, but like I was just thinking, like, man, every time I'm on Facebook, it always had like the reputation of like being the quote unquote like fake news site ever since like 2016, right? But now it's like it's so fake that it's not even like a messed up headline. It's just complete bullshit.
No, you're spot
Just
on, and like
complete AI. Like
because like the end result of the anti-intellectualism that we've seen these past couple of years was pure mental laziness, right? And you're kind of seeing it with like this, like what is AI? It's fucking copy paste. It
yeah,
got the info from somewhere else, it spit it back out to you. Now you're fucking copying that into Outlook and sending it to your boss. Let's not pretend like anything different is happening. I don't care if you're like a Chat GPT super user. That's what you do. Be honest. I would have more respect for you in that case, right? So then you
right.
take that, okay, and you apply that to like the end result of like why does a company have a letterhead? Why does a company have a logo? Why do you do marketing? Why do you produce letterheads? Why uh why do any of this, right? And the idea is like their brain is at I want to make money and not what am I doing to make said money. You get what I'm saying?
Right.
And it's like that's why AI slop is happening because everyone is rushing to the end. It's like going okay, forgive the analogy, right? It's like dudes who jack off to Nugget. Never mind. Let's rehash that. Let's rehash that. There's a better way to make this joke.
People who are gooning to AI, you were saying.
See, that's what I'm getting at now, right? It's like gooning to AI is a new thing, bro. You can't even watch hentai no more. The whole point,
I want
the
to know
whole
there was
point.
human input into this.
I want to like, God forbid you want to ethically goon. I don't know.
There's,
I'm not an
there,
expert on gooning
there's
ethics, but like,
there are no there's no ethical gooning under capitalism.
There is no ethical gooning under capitalism. There's no ethical gooning under patriarchy. Let's be honest, right? But um when you come out with this idea of like
Oh yeah.
the right word worldview, right? Where it's like all it is about being dominant. All it is about having the most. How do you do that? By having money, by having power. So they just like slingshot their way to the end without having done any of the effort, right? Without understanding anything of why they did it.
Yeah.
It's like we live in stupid world right now. I don't fucking get it. I don't fucking get it. And then did you see that picture of Gretchen Whitmer was standing next to Sam Altman and like they're
Yep.
for
At
like the data center.
yep.
That's disappointing as hell. That's disappointing as hell because you're
Yeah.
seeing like all across the Midwest, um, it seems like a pretty reasonable demand of people resisting both data centers and flock cameras.
Yeah.
And the response is you're going to get left in the dust, old man. And it's like, this isn't revolutionary technology.
No, and it also just fundamentally misunderstands what this technology even does.
It is, and they want that misunderstanding to exist because it continues to sell, right? If you just continue to build the notion that, hey, are you an entrepreneurial individual? Do you want to start your business? Just generate it. Just generate it. Just do you need an LLC? Don't go to a notary. Don't go to a lawyer. Just generate the document. Do you have to pull up in court? Generate a legal witness, generate your AI, generate your lawyer, and defend yourself. Just do it.
For what it's
You
worth, the
don't need to think.
judges in at least Brazil are using it to make decisions on cases.
This is what I'm talking about. This is what I'm talking about. Nobody wants to take responsibility for anything. Nobody wants to. I'm turning into an old man. I'm so sorry, everyone.
Yeah, this is how you got left behind.
This is how I got left. This is, oh my god. It's you like no one is serious about this, right? Like we live in like the rotting shadow of boomers' minds, right?
Yeah,
And it's being filled in with what? AI.
pretty much.
So yeah, like it, yeah, Mafty, you got it wrong. It's data centers. It's data centers. Um
Well, I was gonna say too, like it's something that like I had this like passing thought before we even got into this sidebar. Um, there is like a weird thing with Gundam in particular because it tends to because it's portraying the future, but in the real world, but it's like the future based on like the understanding of like the present, right? So like that's why like you've had like every time they do the colony drop reanimated, they have to like, well, here's the Sydney Opera House that wasn't around in 1979,
right.
and stuff like that. That like, well, it's gotta we have to like retroactively do it. But I was like thinking like how like it's interesting because it's like even though like it's the future, they never really like it doesn't necessarily beyond the fact that like hey we're in space we're in wherever they don't really ever um they don't like imagine like what like these environments would necessarily be in like a super like robust way.
Yeah, not a super ton, right?
Like I mean I've ever been to Hong Kong. I don't think it didn't look to me like a way that it couldn't look today in the
that
movie.
that that is true, right? And it's like, is it just the Fukuyamaist view of like, yeah, things will probably look the same but shittier? Like lack of imagination
I
we're
don't think
in.
he quite thought shittier, but
Um,
what I don't think that's quite what he had in mind.
I don't think he said that. Oh no. It's I think maybe Zeta is the only time I've seen it explored somewhat where, or even in like the second 0079 movie where you have the parts that take place in North America and the North American front, America looks bizarrely rural even by present circumstances. And I
Yeah.
think it's implied that like the United States was one of the battlefields um
Yeah,
between the Federation and Xeon.
it's like pretty much like the first one um
R-
that they sweep up. So like there is stuff like that, and I think I saw someone else like talk about how like there's a weird like kind of romanticism of like rural things in
yeah.
Tomino's work, where it's like, people are like, in some ways, to the contemporary audience, the space colonies feel more connected with what their daily life is like than these rural areas.
Yeah. No, for
Like
sure.
Casarelia and Victory is just like kind of this like romanticized like, farm country that like
Yeah, the
doesn't exist at all.
romanticized yeah, the European pastures. It's just
Yeah.
what like it yeah. No, you're spot on there. You're spot on. It's just I love Universal Century as a setting.
Yeah.
It's already so well developed, but like there's so many ideas you can run with, right? Of like different splinter movements, different factions in the Earth
Yeah.
Federation. And at the same time though, like not going whole hog into world building is how you continue making new properties. So I can't say I blame them.
Or you can go whole hog into world building by just keep building out the world more and more.
That's true. No, that's spot on. All right. Do you want to hear from Tomino-san?
Yeah, let's hear.
All right. Let's pull up this interview. Um this in splits.
Oh, do we have audio?
No. This is
No.
a translation of an interview he did. Um, so in the May 2026 issue of Animage, Mobile Suit Gundam creator Yoshihiko Tomino expressed disappointment in how some fans interact with the series. As highlighted by Japanese literary researcher Kajipan Marco Sangetsu on X yesterday, the Mobile Suit Gundam series original creator Yoshihiko Tomino recently had some things to say about the state of today's politics and the way Gundam is consumed. As a creator who held memories of incendiary bombs being dropped nearby on his own hometown during World War II, it's no secret that Tomino conceptualized the Gundam series with a strong anti-war sentiment, with the first series 1 year war specifically being modeled after the American Civil War. Interesting.
Yeah,
Interesting.
that's not what I would have figured at all.
But let's say no, I can kind of see Xeon as the Confederacy now. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
um, uh, While Tomino has on several occasions hinted that he's not happy with how uncritically Gundam has come to be interacted with and produced in recent years, he's quite outspoken on the topic in the May 2026 issue of Animage. Quote, even among Gundam fans, there are many who make statements that are a far cry from anti-war. They seem to be stuck in the mindset of mere military geeks, and in the end, perhaps nothing of substance is getting across, he said. Kajipan links this to a 2025 comment from Tomino saying, the words that come out of Gundam fans' mouths are, mobile suit battles are so cool. Nowadays, younger creators are making Gundam, but there's no hint of war experience in what they make, they're just picture stories. That is my responsibility for not having have taught them. On a similar note, he told Kyoto News last year that he also considers the media responsible for the lack of awareness about the true nature of war among the general public, for failing to convey the real voices of soldiers and the politicians who order suicide attacks. Tomino's new statements seem to
You
come
could
from
tell
his.
this is also very much like in the Japanese context too.
It's very much in the Japanese context, but like if
Oh, there's
you
some that's
kind,
definitely cross applicable, yeah.
it's very cross applicable to countries we may or may not be in. I'll put it that way. Secretaries who may be of defense or war. Who's to say? Who's to say?
Yeah.
Um, Tomino's new statements seem to come from his disappointment in the state of today's politics, particularly in Japan, as he comments, you don't even need to look at the example of Nazi Germany to see that dictatorships are usually established through elections. This is exactly the case in Japan today, and I think that the foolish crowd of ignorant people is truly dreadful.
Think of like how little, like how few people here are willing to say that, where it's, I think, even more explicit as a parallel.
Right. Right. I just again, how many people are willing to say that they think that the foolish crowd of ignorant people are truly dreadful?
We had one brave woman in 2016.
I don't know. Maybe it's time to revisit the whole basket of deplorables moment. I don't know. Oh my god. Wait, Dr. Jill Stein?
Yeah, that's who I had in mind.
Ah, okay, okay, my bad,
No,
my
no.
bad. Okay.
No, what was it's funny because I was thinking like everyone like says like, because I always see like where people like point out like, oh, she was totally right about this. Never that comment, but like other things, and it's like, yeah, like you could be, you know mentally brain dead and have come to the same exact conclusion.
No, it's
Like,
really like the idea of principled conservatism is kind of gone at this point, right? You could argue it was a dubious concept to begin with, but um anyone I know with those views seems very quiet lately. They seem very quiet and
yeah,
like we said at the start of the episode, all the real patriots are the ones that are doing the MAGA song and dance at this point.
yeah,
So I don't know. Somebody needs to get into the Kasai Gundam like real quick. I don't know, man.
right.
I don't know. No, there's a bunch of stuff we should touch on in future episodes, to say the least. Um, but I think it is reassuring to hear from Tomino today, even though that like he is as depressed as ever. But it is like refreshing that he's like, yeah, the original ideological heart, even if it was presented in a ham-fisted way for a cartoon, should never be lost
Yeah.
in any future works. So like again, with the way that like Hathaway Part 1 and Hathaway Part 2 have been presented, I'm confident that like they won't do something weird in Part 3. I think it'll still be pretty good. But like
Mhm.
you said, if we see it in this lifetime is one question. Um and the second then is like, why would Bandai be willing to say, yeah, you guys get Hathaway, but can we also make a chudded up live action?
I think some of that too is just them trying. I think it seems like they are attempting to kind of, what is this, number three, uh, third effort to get over into the West.
Yeah, with and like I'm pretty sure guy what is that? Is it Guy Gear or is it Guy Defender? Guy Defender probably has
G
its moment.
Savior.
G Savior, yeah. Maybe G Savior was okay. I don't know. I haven't seen it yet.
Well, you suggested when I
That is true.
mentioned we
That
might
is
do a
true.
future episode.
I should shut my ass up and watch it. You're right. You're right. We should do that. Um but like okay, this is what's coming to mind to me as well, right? Um at the movies now we've been seeing ads for a He-Man live action adaptation.
Yeah, I think that comes out this weekend.
And it's like everyone's trying to bring the 80s back in their own ways. Probably because again,
That's
like
been that's been like the past 20 to 30
it's
years.
been the past 20 years. And it's again, maybe it is just like America, like what again, uh like we talked about with wanting unavailable people. America still wants to be love bombed by Reagan once again. And maybe that's like again, like that's why America fell for Trump, just to be gaslit again by this shitty rich dude. And then let's
With
reenact.
Alzheimer's.
There you go. There you go. And then and again, it's like, okay, so what are we gonna do for cultural artifacts of this generation? It's either the most uh just violent racist shit like Chud the Builder and kick streaming, or we're just gonna like bring back like the mega properties from the 80s. And if you think of something like He-Man, for example, right? I'm not saying He-Man's bad. I just haven't seen it in forever. And like, I was probably watching like the readaptation from 2004, which was the
Yeah.
last time a bunch of stuff from the 80s had a bunch of reboots.
Yep.
Think Gundam, think Transformers, think He-Man,
Yep.
right? Um, and now like here we are with it again, and I think it's just anyone who's held on to like a legacy 80s property, cash cow of some kind, um, is just not only are they hitting the live action adaptation money printing machine button, but they're also like again probably coasting on the idea of nostalgia as an effective marketing gimmick. Who's to say?
Yeah, I think that's a lot of it too. Right. And it's I don't know, I mean and like not to be, again like kind of the old man yelling at clouds or whatever, but
That
I
was me
think
today
that's
too. Don't worry.
I know, but like not to like double down on it, but it is kind of like, to your point on the modern culture stuff that's not a reboot. I don't think it's exactly anything inspiring.
Yeah, I mean, and there's so little of it that's good, right?
Yeah.
Like I mean, you had Sinners, and then that got like shaded, and even then it was like a standalone movie. So there's that. Cinema is like clearly back in some way post pandemic, but
But it's
it
like for
doesn't.
like really bad reasons, right? It's because like I mean I think one of the Obsession's been doing really well this week. And it's
Right.
like a lot of people going there to like film the viral moments that they already saw on TikTok.
Which, and again, let's actually get into that now, right? Which is like the TikTokification of movies. And then,
Which this was free of. I didn't see like, there was no one whipping out their phone in the movie, that at least when I went. Um, I don't know if there's clips out there of it on TikTok, but it hasn't, I haven't seen
no, I haven't
that
seen any
issue.
short form content for it, which is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
But, um, like you said at the start of this episode, like media literacy, and then with this broader theme we've been talking about one, intellectual high mindedness being a problem of its own, but then also the lack of it and the way that the gap has only worsened as a consequence, right?
Yeah.
It's changing how we view our relationship to art. It's changing how we view our relationship to media, and it's changing our relation to how we view one another. And that's very sad stuff. And I think like that's probably like the biggest tragedy of the Trump era to me, among so many unspeakable tragedies to name, right? Of how hyper alienated we've all become, how hyper alienated um we're ordered at gunpoint to be at this point, right?
Hmm.
You cannot see anyone as yourself. You cannot demand better for yourself and others. But if you do better your condition, it's only because you finesse people into it, right? Um it's tragic.
Yeah.
So final ratings, did we do, I forget if we did out of 10 or out of 5. I'm going to say 4. I'm going to give both a 4
Out of 10?
out of 5.
Okay. I think that's where I would go to.
Yeah.
Um,
Um
I wouldn't recommend watching these as standalone. In terms of like, do you need to watch all of UC prior to this? This was kind of a debate that had come up. I don't think you really do. I would say like Char's counterattack would help, especially for the second movie.
yeah.
Beyond that, like, you know, I guess the compilation movies to lead you into Char's counterattack. I love Zeta and Double Zeta. I don't necessarily think they're essential for this. If you're just like, I just want to hop in, I want to watch Halfway, it's the new thing, whatever. You can go back and like fill out that content later, right? Because I mean that's the kind of thing too. Like I think that people get kind of bogged down on with like watch orders is that I mean one like Just look at how the Universal Century timeline has been fleshed out, right? It hasn't been done in a particularly linear way. It was at first, but with side content and everything, it's just kind of been like, okay,
Right.
yeah, like let's just, let's tell the 50th story in the 1 Year War. Um,
Right. Which
using all
again,
the same tropes, but
I love 1 Year War stories. I do love them. I just
Mhm.
was surprised that like um and this is another thing since we were talking about the live action movie too, right? Where Requiem for Vengeance, not
Yep.
not the worst thing they've ever made, but like
I actually haven't watched. I watched the first episode. That's all I've seen.
I'll put it this way, the entire 5 episodes of it would be the first 10 minutes of 8th MS team. You get what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
it
Well,
well
it
trodden.
definitely came across like it was inspired. They even had a shared character, which was kind of surprising because he's
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
yeah,
So it definitely is like a 8th MS team style story, but
which was another Gundam that was pretty popular here. So that's why the
right,
Westerners making this content are doing what was popular with them.
right. And it's like what kind of bites with that work is you had a bunch of original characters. You actually had some original mobile suit designs, right?
Hmm.
And you would even argue like the format of doing them in CGI that way and kind of really playing up how scary mobile suits would look in real life was like a welcome touch, but that's also a question of why was that
Yeah,
adaptation made at all?
yeah.
I'm sorry. That was another sidetrack. What were we where did we
I was
start?
just like kind of going into like in terms of watching it, like as
Oh
said,
yeah, no,
I'd
like
recommend it, but I would watch them together. The second movie does have a quick catch up on like the prior movie at the beginning.
that's true. It
It
does
is
have a recap at the start.
it is terrible. Um, it's out of order. It's kind of just like it's like a very bizarre highlight reel.
Yeah, and I think the benefit for I watched it with my wife, which was funny because then now there was one woman in the room watching this movie. So I'm just making a joke that it was all dudes there. Anyways,
Yeah, no, I
um
get it.
uh sorry. So like we watched the first adaptation like the night before, and you're right, like the recap was like completely inadequate
Yeah,
because the plot was pretty complex for the first one, and like you said too, I think you could watch Char's counterattack first and then probably understand what's going on. But the thing about UC is the more of it you watch, the more your enjoyment of subsequent installments is enhanced
yeah.
through the Glupshido effect. I think like and I still need to see the new Star Wars movie that came out because we talk about the Glupshido phenomenon in Gundam a lot. But
Hmm.
I think like what Gundam does is like the Glupshidos drive a plot point instead of it being like, oh hey, there's Glupshido. Um,
Yeah, where it's like that, like historically, I think it's been pretty bad in Star Wars canon since they did the reboot with Disney. But
yeah.
originally, like the Glup Shitos, where it was like, all right, here's like this background character. If you read like the visual dictionary, they've got like a little bit of backstory for
Oh,
them
the
that's kind
visual
of
dictionaries were
interesting.
so cool. Oh my
Yeah.
god.
And those are still around, but they're not. They don't hit the same. For a few different reasons, but that's a whole different conversation. Or you had stuff like you had like the books, like you had like these anthology books in particular, like the Tales
Right.
of the Bounty Hunters, Tales of the Cantina, where it was like, hey, this random background dude is actually this really interesting character that did like all these weird things. Um, and Gundam doesn't really, as you said, they exist in service of plots. They're very rarely fleshed out in other things. I think like yeah, some of the people from like MSV because they just existed as names, were taken up later. So like your characters like Johnny Raiden and stuff like that
Yeah.
are pretty well fleshed out in manga. But you don't have like, I don't know, like Shalia Bull up until he was a major feature in G-Quacks had like nothing. I
Yeah,
guess
he
he
was like
was,
a side character pretty much, like for or
yeah,
like monster of the week type stuff.
yeah, he was he was basically a monster of the week in the original show. Gyron's greed gave him some stuff because he would be one of the people that would join you if Char took over Xeon. Um, and then G-Quacks kind of ran with that as like his concept. But for the but the characters like that, my point is like they do just exist for like apply. And even then, I mean, Monster of the Week, he wasn't even in the movies. He
Yeah,
was that
yeah, he got
minor.
cut out.
Like,
Which ironically, the other thing too is like they cut McHugh out of the movies too, and like
he's they cut the Gion fight. I believe they have the odds on, and maybe not. They don't have that, but they have him like in like Battle of Odessa stuff.
okay, okay.
But yeah, he's like a major character.
Which is like again, like I would love to sit through like the original animated series, but also it's like 51 like super janky episodes will get you at a
A little
point.
shorter than that. Yeah,
I think it was 48 or something like that. I don't know.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not even that it was bad. Like it was like I watched like the first 3 episodes and it was like super entertaining, but it was like, okay, I don't know if I have it in me to sit through like all of this super old stuff. At least where my head was at, because I wanted to get to Zeta super quick. So
Yeah, and I think that that's fine, right? And I think just so many people get caught up in the idea, well, no, you have to watch that first. And because you're not having like the most optimal time with it, you don't get through that and then you don't get to anything else.
no, that's actually spot on because I think like in my experience talking to like at least some other like people about this, their experience of watching like the MCU was so formative to them on the idea of like a timeline
Mm.
must be respected, a viewing order must be respected.
And
Um
now that that a lot of people kind of took like a break and it feels like, oh, they've got a million things to catch up on.
right.
They just don't even bother. And I think like, yeah, the timeline might matter a little bit, but like their movies post Infinity War have been so like
I can't remember any of
separated
them.
from each. They've been so separated from each other that's like you could just watch them in any order. Like,
I bet. I bet.
yeah, like it's
And it's like the same thing with Star Wars. Like I think I've gotten into fights with people about what the ideal watch order is. Because it probably does it really does make an impact on your experience, I think, but
yeah,
that's why people argue about it because they are what they're arguing about is their experience, right?
yeah.
Um, so I do think like you should watch all of UC
Or like
before
them
you.
trying to like inflict like their own like artistic vision on it, right? Like, oh,
Yeah,
you got to
yeah,
watch like the episodes 4 or 5, then go back to the original, the prequels, and then watch episode 6.
right,
Like
right.
you know what I mean? Like you get that stuff where it's like, oh, like you got the flashback and all that. Um, and then that's not, that almost certainly is not reflective of their experience, but it's probably reflective of, just whatever they think is like artistically what makes the most sense in their mind.
Right, and like that's the like the beauty of consuming art is that you have the freedom to interpret it multiple ways, the ability to get multiple things out of it. Some reads are interesting, some reads are banal, some reads are controversial because it's like the read of a work also says something about you in a way, right?
Yeah.
So I think like you told me that you can watch Char's Counterattack after having seen like the original trilogy. You don't need to worry
Yeah.
about, and that is objectively true. That is objectively true. But
Mhm.
then like um the combat definitely scared me for a second because I didn't understand what the balloons were for. So the
Oh,
whole time I watched Char's Counterattack, I thought that like, oh my god, all the wars in Zeta detrimental to mankind that they have to use this kind of trickery. And it's like, actually, no, Minovsky physics necessitates that you use those tactics. That's okay. They're gonna continue
Yeah,
doing that.
yeah, like, and it's like it makes sense, like when you think of like the stuff because I mean, like on some level, there's just sort of like, oh, it looks cool or whatever, but it's like there's a little justification too that like, yeah, it's all line of sight. Dummies like this work. Like, there's a reason why Char can dupe the Federation with balloon ships.
Right, right. And it's like you would think that was crazy unless you'd seen Zeta and Double Zeta, and you're like, nope, that is a valid tactic in this world. That makes sense.
Yeah, and it's like there's something you get out of that, but right, but my point is again, just like as far as the watch order is concerned, it's just I think there's a lot of ways you can experience this. Don't feel that you need to, because there was a lot of debate because they Bandai had posted a catch up to like
Mm.
UC to watch this, and they had um the MSG trilogy, the Zeta New Translation trilogy, which was where things were a little bit more contentious, and it's like,
Zeta, yeah, the new translation. If anyone's like, oh, what's the merit of watching it? There's a bunch of beautifully reanimated scenes. Aside from that, nothing else. It doesn't really add much of value.
yeah, it's like it
It takes
changes the
out a
it,
bunch of important things.
yeah, and it changes the context of a lot too, because like it'll like combine certain fights, um, and whatnot. The ending is obviously very different, and the ending also doesn't work with Double Zeta, which was not on the watch order list. CCA was, Unicorn was not, because, and to be fair, I don't like. I mean, obviously, I would highly recommend Unicorn. I love Unicorn, but this was not ever written with that in mind. So
Right, and I
you don't need to watch it for
and
the
I think
purposes of watching this.
you're definitely you're spot on with your watch order because my wife probably only sat through Char's counterattack. Like she's seen a bunch of
Yeah,
Gundam passively from me watching it, but like
sure.
she only sat down to watch Char's counterattack.
Yeah,
And then sat for both Hathaway movies, and that was plenty.
yeah.
So like you will
Uh,
survive if you only watch that movie.
Yeah, and then my point, because the double Zeta thing was where there was a lot of contention, where people were like blowing up, like, no, you have to watch it, and it's like, again, it's like we get so caught up in like, you do not need to be an encyclopedia of a series to get into it. If you want to become one afterwards, that's awesome. But I just think that attitude that we have is like really, it's that's how you don't get into things, right? It becomes this like paralysis issue of like, it's just like, well, if I want to do this, it's like there's so much, there's hundreds of hours of things I need to watch.
No, you're spot on because like we were talking about earlier, like our relationship to how we consume media has changed as a consequence of all this,
Yeah.
right? So like the and again, it comes back to media literacy. We're just if we learned a new word today, it's that, right? Where why are we consuming this? Do we know how to be formalists when we consume
Yeah.
something, right? Do we need to know the backstory of something before we watch something? Are we able to like watch something and say, hey, I'm gonna take a note of that, come back, watch something else, and then come back to this with added context? It's okay not to understand a work the first time you watch it.
Yeah.
Because especially something like this is a super complicated plot on its own standards. Like
Mhm.
the two movies themselves have very dynamic plots, so like they're pretty complicated on their own. And if you're like, hey, I want to watch this, what's the least amount of watch order? Yeah, just watch Char's counterattack or dive straight in.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't watch the second movie without the first one.
That's obvious, yeah, for sure.
That's like the one thing, like definitely, do that. I think the second movie does not stand on its own particularly
Right.
well. Just because it's like there's just so much context, and like it's not like one of those things where it's like, well, hey, maybe we could have like jumped into a novel with like this angsty character. Like no, it would not. Like I just would not recommend it.
For sure, for sure. But I also think like this is, and maybe not to bring Star Wars back into it again, right? But to kind of summarize George Lucas's stories of like watching old sci-fi movies, coming in the middle of the movie, missing part of it, and trying to
Yeah.
figure out what happened before the moment he started watching, right? It's okay to like come into this like, no, who the fuck is Hathaway? Why do we care about him? Why is the Federation bad?
Yeah.
Why would people be supportive of Char? What this movie does actually, because it's a more recent work and because it's more obviously connected to certain past works,
Yeah.
you can go in the reverse order on yourself. So like,
Yeah.
no, that's great stuff, man. I'm glad you brought that up. It's like, do not feel compelled to obey the watch order.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That's a shit. That's one of the best notes we've ended on forever.
Well, normally we're talking about like such depressing things that like, which I mean,
We
things
still
were at
did.
points, but it's usually we end on like this existential crisis, which like this was like a more fun existential crisis, right? Like just, how to deal with your neurodivergent impulse.
Yeah, right.
Basically.
No, and I mean that's the thing, right? Is like I people feel this way, especially because like people read less now too. Of
Yeah.
like, oh my god, it's this huge like work, it's this huge thing. How am I going to tackle it? Piece by piece, chill.
Yeah.
You'll get through it. You'll get through it. Oh my gosh. Well, we have been at this for about 2 hours plus, so I'm not sure what else I can really say other than I really liked it. I'm waiting for the third part to come out, and maybe fingers crossed, G-Quux Part 2.
That would be nice too. I
Yes.
expect more episodes before those things come out.
Yeah, this show will definitely. That's the other thing that's like been rough to figure out is like I'm just talking openly, right? Is I don't know if it's been the right way to run a show without like a social media account in parallel, but it has been nice to just record without wondering what people are thinking about the show. And even then, like I don't know if we got a ton of social media engagement to begin with, but it probably would be a good idea to have something. But also, like, all social media sucks right now. I could not imagine having an IG page or like a Blue Sky page for this right now. Twitter is still a mess. So I don't know. I don't
Yeah,
know how we.
yeah, it's great. Now you had to suck us back into the abyss.
Well, no, and that's what I'm saying, right? Is like how we relate to the abyss is like that's something you do have to know, right? Is like, do you
Yeah.
want to be on social media or not? That's something I got to think about.
Yeah, yeah, I get what you're saying, and it's tough with just the enshittification of all of the platforms, with the internet kind of as a whole. But especially, I think that like has really stood out as just like with social media, how like less usable it is. Right, Facebook will show you um, probably a few core people. Their posts will tend to show up frequently on your timeline if they are posting.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, it's like I guess occasionally I get some real articles, but like I'm mostly saying like just scrolling through mine real quick. A bunch of ads, a bunch of weird reels.
Ads have been like worse on all platforms too. Like
Yeah,
YouTube
uh,
is practically unusable at this point.
yeah, reels are really random. Some are less safe for work than others. Um, Lots of AI crap. Most art that I see on Facebook, I presume, is AI at this point. Just because that's what's fed into the feed.
Right, and like the more AI slop gets generated, the more like these models are just going to regenerate off the slop. It's only going to
Yeah,
get worse, guys.
yeah.
Ugh.
Well, in the spirit of that, I am going to see if Grok can make me that third halfway movie, so I can see that in this lifetime.
Oh god. Maybe don't. Maybe don't. Um No, it was definitely been great to come back on. Expect more from us in the future, dear listener. Uh, when we'll have stuff, I'm working on it. I promise I'm working on it. But it's been great to be back. Thanks for doing this again, Josh.
And of course.
And thanks again to you, dear listener. We have all our links in the thing. Uh, look out for updates. Until then, take care, stay safe. We'll see you on the next one. Bye bye.